Who will be the Kings' number one goalie next season? We discuss that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We would love you to leave us a positive comment and some feedback on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we're on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. Also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 17 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Coming up on today's show, we're going to tell you about a Kings goalie prospect that made a major announcement about his future, but we'll begin with the future in net for the Kings next season. I've talked about three holes that I think the Kings are likely going to be looking to fill. Whether they fill that through free agency, promoting a player, or a trade, that remains to be seen, but I think they're looking for a third line left winger. I think they're looking for a left shot third pairing defenseman, and of course, a number one goalie. Now, if the Kings are looking to upgrade a net through free agency, here's a list of the top 10 free agent goalies ranked by number of regular season wins from this past season. At number 10, with 11 wins, James Reimer. He was the number 2 goalie in Detroit this past season, the backup to Alex Lyon. The 36-year-old Reimer has been around. Last year, he was 11-8-2, 3.11 goals against average, and a .904 save percentage with 2 shutouts. James Reimer. At number 9 with 12 wins, Casey DeSmith. He was the number 2 goalie in Vancouver as the backup to Thatcher Demko. DeSmith is 32 years old. He was 12-9-6, a 2.98 goals against average, and an .896 save percentage with 1 shutout. Casey DeSmith. At number 8 with 12 wins also, Antti Ranta. He was the number 2 goalie and at times the number 3 goalie for the Carolina Hurricanes. The 35-year-old had a record of 12-7-2 with a 2.99 goals against average and 872 save percentage with 1 shutout. Antti Ranta. At number 7, also with 12 wins, is Calvin Pickard. He is the number 2 goalie for the Edmonton Oilers as their season is still going on as we speak. Hopefully not for much longer. But the 32-year-old Pickard, 12-7-1 for Edmonton this season, a 2.45 goals against average and a .909 save percentage with 1 shutout. Again, these are regular season numbers. He did get into a couple of playoff games for Edmonton. At number 6 with 15 wins is Laurent Brossoit, which is one of my favorite names to say. He was the number 2 goalie for the Winnipeg Jets behind Connor Hellebuck. The 31-year-old Brossoit was 15-5-2, a goals against average of 2, and a .927 save percentage with 3 shutouts. Very good numbers for a number 2 goalie, Laurent Brossoit. At number 5 with 16 wins is Scott Wedgwood. He was the number 2 goalie for the Dallas Stars this season behind Jake Ottinger. Wedgwood's 31 years old. He had a record of 16-7-5, a 2.85 goals against average, and an .899 save percentage with no shutouts. Number 4 with 16 wins is Anthony Stolarz. He is the number 2 goalie currently for the Florida Panthers behind Sergei Bobrovsky. Hopefully he will help his team eliminate the Edmonton Oilers here tonight. The 30-year-old Stolarz went 16-7-2 this year, a 2.03 goals against average, a .925 save percentage with 2 shutouts, so not bad numbers there. At number 3 with 18 wins, Alex Nedeljkovic. He was the number 2 goalie to Tristan Jarry for the Pittsburgh Penguins this season. The 28-year-old was 18-7-7, a goals against average of 2.97, save percentage of .902 with 1 shutout. At number 2 with 23 wins. Ilya Samsonov, he was the number one goalie for the Toronto Maple Leafs this season. 27-year-old was 23-7-8 with a 3.13 goals against average and an 890 save percentage with 3 shutouts. In the postseason, he was 1-4, 3.01 goals against average and 896 save percentage. He lost his starting job to Joseph Woll for games 5 and 6 of their playoff series against Boston. He did come back to start in game 7, actually played pretty well in a tough overtime loss to the Bruins. He allowed 2 goals on 32 shots in that game 7 defeat. And the number one unrestricted free agent goaltender available as far as number of regular season wins with 27, Cam Talbot, the number one goalie for the Los Angeles Kings. 36-year-old went 27, 20, and 6, a 2.50 goals against average, and a 913 save percentage with 3 shutouts. In the playoffs, he was 1-2 with a goals against average of 5.3 and a save percentage of 861. So as far as the UFAs, the unrestricted free agent goalies that are available, only 2 of them were number one goalies this past season, Cam Talbot and Ilya Samsonov. What would it take to sign those players if the Kings wanted to do that? Well, Talbot made around $2 million with incentives last season. Samsonov made $3.5 million last year for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I would say if you're looking to sign those guys, it would at least be similar numbers than the season before. Now, who are the teams that are looking to sign a number one goalie this offseason or acquire a number one goalie? Clearly the Kings, probably the New Jersey Devils. The Maple Leafs might be, but they could also maybe promote Joseph Woll while signing a reliable insurance goalie if things don't work out with Woll. I think it's possible the Avalanche and Hurricanes could be looking for a number one goalie as well. So I think a lot of teams would like to sign Cam Talbot as a solid veteran number 2 goalie, but I also have no doubt that Talbot would like to be a number one goalie as his career is winding down and would like to be a number one goalie on a playoff caliber team. Now, the Kings obviously made the playoffs last year, as did the Maple Leafs. The Avalanche and the Hurricanes did as well. The Devils did not. They were an underachieving team this past year, but I don't think it would be a big surprise if they were to bounce back next season and be a playoff team. Now, I don't think if anyone is interested in Cam Talbot to be their number one goalie, that they would pay him more than, say, $3 million a year. He's turning 37 in July. I also would doubt that any team would want to sign him on anything more than a 1-year deal. I think that he could get something similar in Los Angeles to try and stay the number one goalie, something I would say no more than $3 million a year. If somehow the Kings were looking to go with one of the other goalies that was mentioned, I would say probably the most attractive UFA goalie other than Talbot would be Laurent Brossoit. Maybe the second choice would be Anthony Stolarz of Florida, and then maybe the third choice would be Ilya Samsonov. But I think the Kings, obviously, they know Cam Talbot. They're comfortable with him. Yes, he didn't perform well in the postseason. Neither did the Kings as a whole. So I think they would be comfortable with each other, but there are certainly other possibilities out there for the Kings if they decide to move away from Cam Talbot and if Cam Talbot decides he wants to go elsewhere. Now, if the Kings are looking to upgrade via trade, obviously that means giving up something. And the Kings don't have a lot to give up. Of course, a first-round pick is always there, but the Kings have given up a lot of their first-round picks lately. They have one this year that would be available in a trade. Number 21, as we talked about on yesterday's show. But if the Kings were looking to make a trade, the names that are out there remain the names we've already talked about. Calgary's Jacob Markstrom, Boston's Linus Ullmark, and Nashville's UC Saros are looked at as the 3 most likely candidates for teams looking for a number one goalie to make a trade for. We've heard these names before, and some of them have been rumored to be linked to Los Angeles. The 34-year-old Markstrom from the Flames has a full no movement clause. He's going to make $6 million, and he's signed for each of the next 2 seasons. So if there's a trade, obviously the Kings would have to take on that contract. And there's the question of, does he want to come to LA? There were rumors that there were trade talks in the works and that he didn't want to come to LA. Whether that's true or not, we do not know. Same goes for the 30-year-old Linus Ullmark. He has a 16-team no-trade list. He's under contract to make $5 million next season. There were also rumors he was going to come to Los Angeles, but that he killed a trade as well. Didn't want to come west. Again, don't have that confirmed, but that was the rumor that was out there. There were also some reports that say that was not true. What the truth actually is, we don't know, and we're probably not going to know. As for the 29-year-old Saros from Nashville, no restrictions from him as far as a no movement or a no trade. He'll make $5 million for next season, and it does appear because of the no restrictions, he might be the most likely candidate to come to LA. But again, the Kings would have to give something up for him. Is he a big upgrade over some of the other names that we've mentioned? I would say no, but an upgrade, yes. Huge upgrade, I think that's up for debate. So going to be very curious to see what direction the Kings go in to get that number one goalie. We know we've got the number two goalie set in David Riddick. That's signed 1 year, $1 million deal. But I think re-signing Quentin Byfield is the team's number one priority this offseason, but figuring out who's going to be the next number one goalie, I think, is a close second. Up next, perhaps the future in net for the Kings makes an interesting decision about his season for next year. We'll talk about that next year on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Summertime means baseball, plus the NHL and NBA finals. Although the NBA finals are now done, you can bet on all of it with FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the Stanley Cup finals, if they continue on after tonight. You can also bet on all the slap shots, home runs, and slam dunks on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. The Dodgers continue to roll. They're one of the top teams in all of Major League Baseball. You want to bet on the Dodgers to win it all this season? How about the Florida Panthers looking to close out the Edmonton Oilers? Hopefully they do it tonight. If not, though, you could certainly take a bet on them to win it all. It is a great time of the year to be a sports fan, and you can have even more fun by winning with FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. If you're an everydayer, if you have listened to the show for a while, you should be familiar with the name Hampus Skulinski. Now, if you're not, that's okay. But I have talked about how this is the most exciting young prospect the Kings have. For me, that's not named Brant Clark. I am very excited about this possible future goalie for the LA Kings. He is still obviously very young, got a long way to go. But if you're not familiar with him, Hampus Skulinski was a fourth-round pick of the Kings in 2023. And so far, he has been a dominant goaltender at every level that he has played. Dominant. 2 seasons as a starting goalie at powerful War Road High School in Minnesota. He had a combined record of 54, 5-2 with 18 shutouts. His goals against average his junior year, 1.59, and a save percentage of .925. He was even better his senior season with a GAA of 1.47 and a save percentage of .941. This past season was his first year playing in junior hockey for the Fargo Force of the U.S. Hockey League. He posted a record of 28-3, a 1.86 goals against average, and a .923 save percentage with 5 shutouts. He led the league in goals against average and save percentage. That earned him the USHL Goalie of the Year. He also backstopped the Fargo Force to the USHL Championship. Now, he was committed to play at Northern Michigan University, and my thinking was, with his track record, why would he commit to play at with all due respect, a pretty pedestrian college program? Northern Michigan has had its moments over its history, but not one of the bigger college hockey programs of late. It seems like a player with Skulinski's resume would attract a lot of bigger program names, like, a couple of the schools in his native Minnesota, certainly the colleges maybe in the Boston area, Michigan, North Dakota. There's a lot of Denver. There's a lot of schools out there that you would think would be interested in a goaltender like Hampus Skulinski. Again, great in high school, great on his junior team, but I was curious to see how he would perform because the high school team he played on was an elite high school. The junior team he played on obviously was very good as well. So how is he going to do playing on a average college hockey program? Could he continue those same elite numbers? Well, that apparently is a question that is not going to be answered because word came down yesterday that Slukinski has entered the transfer portal and will not be going to Northern Michigan University after all. And I know now at least part of the reason why he was originally going to go to Northern Michigan because his older brother Grant was playing there last season. Now, Grant has also entered the transfer portal as well. Now, if you're unfamiliar with college athletics, the rules have changed recently. There's been a lot of changes recently in college sports, but there was a time where if you had committed to a school and then you had played at a school and then you decided to transfer to another school, you would have to sit out an entire season before going to another school. That rule was in place, designed to keep players from basically going anywhere they want year to year to year. But those rules have changed, and it's very unrestrictive now. You can go to a different school pretty much every year. Now, there are some restrictions, but basically, like I said, if you want to go to a different school over the next few years, you can do that. And something else that has changed in college sports is something called NIL, which stands for name, image, and likeness. And it basically means that a college athlete can get paid now by boosters or even the schools themselves. This move is certainly something that has changed a lot of different sports. You see players now getting sponsorship deals. Sometimes it's just something small, something on social media that gives them a little bit of money. And there are even some college basketball and football players that are making an excess of $2-3 million a season. So it is a game changer and it's very different. So is it possible that there was a college program out there that said, hey, look, these guys are pretty good, or at least Slukinski is pretty good. I honestly don't know anything about his brother. But let's lure this guy to our school. I'm guessing there are a lot of schools out there that would pay more than Northern Michigan. Again, all due respect. But that's certainly a possibility that he could have been enticed to go to another school based on the financial side of it that was offered to him. I also had read that Northern Michigan also had just fired their coach. So that obviously could have played a major factor into it as well. So, if he had committed to play for a certain coach, now that coach is gone, now you want to go somewhere else where there's a coach that you trust, that kind of thing. So there could be many different reasons why the decision was made, but certainly interesting. Again, Hampus Skulinski is in the transfer portal. We don't know where he's going to go at this point, but it'll be very interesting to find out where he ends up landing. Now, how does this affect the Los Angeles Kings and Hampus Skulinski? Well, their relationship isn't affected at all. It doesn't mean anything. He can play anywhere he wants. His rights are still held by the LA Kings, who drafted him. Now, he hasn't been signed to an entry-level deal at this point. That could certainly come if he continues to have success. And then they want the Kings, obviously, to bring him in the organization. But right now, he just is he's the property of the Kings, not under contract. But again, this move doesn't affect that. The Kings really don't care where he plays, frankly. I mean, maybe if they had their preference, there are some programs that maybe they feel would be better in his development, but in the end, it's his decision. And like I said, it doesn't really affect things as far as the LA Kings go. At some point, they were looking to sign him to a 3-year entry-level deal. And then at that point, he'll have a decision to make. Does he stay in college? Does he turn pro? But again, very interesting that maybe the future in net for the LA Kings making a major announcement about his future. And we'll let you know where Hampus Skulinski lands as far as being a college hockey player for next season. We got a couple of Kings-related notes to pass along. We'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Life is unpredictable, but good life insurance gives your family a financial safety net to protect against some of the unknowns. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It makes choosing the right policy for your family easy and quick. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million in coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius helps you easily compare your options from America's top insurers with just a couple of clicks. Policygenius has no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. They have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. Get peace of mind by finding the right life insurance with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quote and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. We got a couple of Kings-related notes to pass along. The Kings AHL affiliate, the Ontario Reign, signed forward Quinn Olson and defenseman Luke Rowe to AHL contracts for next season. Now, these are AHL contracts. They're not LA Kings contracts. So if these players were to be called up by the Kings, they would have to be signed to NHL contracts. As for the 23-year-old Olson, he played collegiately at Minnesota Duluth for 5 seasons, played 1 game for the Reign last season and a handful of playoff games with the Greenville Swamp Rabbits, the Kings ECHL affiliate. The 25-year-old Rowe joined the Reign in February after completing his senior season at the Air Force Academy, where he was team captain for 3 seasons. He appeared in 5 games with the Reign in March, had 2 points and a goal with an assist before suffering an injury that sidelined him for the remainder of the year. So Olson and Rowe joined forwards Jacob Doty, Charles Udon, and defenseman Jack Miller as players who have signed contracts with the Ontario Reign for the 2024 season. So we are still waiting word on some more signings for the LA Kings. It'll be interesting as we talked about the goaltending. Do they want to sign a goalie first and then get into signing Quentin Byfield or vice versa? And then, of course, there's always the rumors out there with the Stanley Cup final hopefully wrapping up here soon that there will be a couple of days available if the Kings change their mind and want to buy out Pierre-Luc Dubois. So still some things to happen, some dominoes to fall for the LA Kings before we get into signing. Of course, the draft right now is also front and center on the plate of the LA Kings. They're getting ready for that coming up at the end of the year. And then free agency, the official free agency period starts on July 1st. So lots of stuff coming up involving the LA Kings. Now, I know it seems impossible, but apparently I made a mistake on Monday's show. We were talking about the Kings and the NHL draft, and I had mentioned, because the Kings have the number 21 pick in this year's draft, some recent Kings draft picks that were in the 20s. And I mentioned Adrian Kempe and I mentioned Rasmus Kupari, but I omitted one player, and Jacques Willix, or Wixon, Jacques, Wixon is what it was on X or Twitter. Jacques Wixon. Anyway, Jacques pointed out that I made a mistake. I forgot another player that was selected under the Mark Yannetti reign, if you will, during this recent time that was in the 20s and was a first-round pick, and that was defenseman Tobias Bjornfot. He was selected with the number 22 pick in the first round in 2019. So I overlooked him because he was the second of the Kings' number 1 picks that year, the first being Alex Turcotte, who was taken 5th overall. So I apologize for not remembering defenseman Tobias Bjornfot, selected 22nd in 2019. Of course, no longer in the Kings organization. He was claimed off waivers by the Vegas Golden Knights and then claimed off waivers from the Golden Knights by the Florida Panthers last season. So yes, Tobias Bjornfot, another player selected in the 20s in the first round for the LA Kings in one of their recent drafts. All right, for you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, we're working on a special guest coming up on Wednesday's show, but we haven't confirmed it, so we're not going to announce who it is at this point. Of course, Friday we'll always have our fan feedback show. Do you have any thoughts on who the Kings are going to take in the NHL draft at number 21? Do you have any thoughts on who the Kings should look to bring in as their number 1 goalie? Should it be one of these UFAs? Should they bring back Cam Talbot, or should they look to make a trade to upgrade a net? And if they do, what are they going to give up to get that number 1 goaltender? Love to get your thoughts on that. The email address is, if you want to send an email, lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You can always leave your comments on the YouTube episodes as well in the comments section. Appreciate that. Definitely helps out the algorithm and helps people to find the show. We'd love you to stay interactive with us on social media, as our guy Jacques did. You can follow us on X, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you as always for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And as always, Go Kings, go.